Yeah, shoot, I forgot.
All right, we are recording. Hi, this is your friend Paige, and I'm here today with one of my very good friends, and she's been like more like a mentor to me, my friend Barb Cash. So for those of you who don't know, Barb and I actually met a very long time ago
Very, very long time ago.
when she was young and I was really young. young. Barb's husband, Tim, is actually the pastor that married my husband, Clay, and I, and we will be married 21 years in October, Barb. Can you believe
That's
that?
a long time.
That's a long, that's a long,
Together, though apart for a long time.
that's a long time. So Barb, tell my friends who you are aside from being married to the guy that married us.
Well, I am married to Tim, and I have 5 kids. Rachel's 27, Benji's 25, and he's married and has a little boy who's almost 1.
Oh, what does he call you?
Nana now.
Nana. Okay.
Yes. And then Jesse is 21 on Friday, and he's getting married Labor Day weekend.
Oh,
and Hannah's 17, and Caleb is 16.
Okay.
And so I'm in my 25th year of homeschooling.
You are a pro.
I've learned just as much what doesn't work as what does. So, process of elimination. But Tim, he played professional baseball. He was in baseball ministry. That's how he met Clay. And then now he's been pastoring. This is his 10th year of pastoring a church in Loganville, Georgia.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Jesse was a baby when Clay and I got married because we got married in October. And isn't Jesse's birthday somewhere around then?
Yep. Well, no, he'll be this Friday. He'll be 21.
He'll be 21 this Friday. Okay. So see, he was a little bitty thing.
Yeah.
So, okay. What I want to know I can't remember. I think you already were homeschooling by this time because you had Rachel and Benji, but what led you to homeschooling in the first place? Were you homeschooled or how did you?
No, but I hated school. So I was a perfect candidate to be homeschooled if that was a thing, really. Where I grew up, I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada, and I'm sure there are people there that did homeschool, but I never knew anybody that was homeschooled. So, but I was always a perfect candidate. I still remember my mom dropping me off at kindergarten and like sobbing hysterically for weeks. So,
That's cool.
and then I was a perfect candidate to homeschool my kids. So, but we initially probably started homeschooling because of Tim and what he did, being in, at that point, he was not playing baseball anymore. He's in baseball ministry.
Okay.
And so we ministered to professional athletes and their families, all Major League Baseball teams. He was a chaplain for the Braves. And so he was on the road a lot, but he would go in the spring to spring training for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so as it got closer, so we would always go with them. And as it got closer for the kids to get in school, I'm like, I just don't really want to be a part for all that time. And so I started researching homeschooling. And so we just started doing it. We'd pack up everything and we'd head to Florida the beginning of March and stay till the end of March. And we'd do school. And Tim's like, you are the only one who comes to Florida and gets a stinking library card. I'm like, look, it's free entertainment. It's free school stuff.
Yes.
So he's like, it's just, we found lots of ways to entertain ourselves and to learn.
Did you have any friends that were homeschooling at the time?
I did. I had one friend that I went to church with who we kind of raised our kids together and homeschooled together. So she was a little bit ahead of me. So she was able to help me realize I could really do this.
Right.
But it just afforded us a lot of time to be together. When Tim was on the road, we could get a lot done. But then when he was home, we could kind of back off a little and spend more time with him. So we just felt like for our lifestyle, it gave us the most opportunity to be together and to really minister together.
Right. That's so great. So did you have any resistance when you told your family or Tim's family that, okay, we're going to homeschool our kids? Did you get any type of like, why are you doing that? Or was it just, oh, wow, that seems great?
Well, okay. So what you have to know about us is we really are not conformists. We tend to think pretty far outside the box. Like I had our babies at home, Rachel's the only one we had in the hospital. So they were already used to us, like kind of being out there a little bit. So I'm sure when we said we wanted to homeschool, they weren't shocked. And it's kind of like when we decided to have our babies at home, we just said, we have really researched, we have
Right.
prayed about this. We really feel like this is what we're supposed to do. And we realize you may have concerns and we're not
Right.
discounting those, but this is what we're choosing to move forward with. And so we pray that you would be
Support us.
supportive of us.
Right.
And if not, we pray that you would just really, if you can sit down and say, I've read this, this is a concern I have, we're happy to talk. But if it's just a personal, like, I just don't think you should do it, then we're probably not going to really entertain a lot of what you have to say.
Right.
And it wasn't like an arrogant way of thinking, but it was, we've really put a lot of time and effort into coming up with this. So the same thing with homeschooling. So really did get back from our family. It was more like just stupid people in grocery stores or doctor's offices, you know, like people that think for some reason they have the right to tell you, or, you know, are all those kids your, no, I just like taking extra kids to the grocery store. So I picked up a few on the way, you know, like, yes, they're all mine.
Yes.
Right. So it was more of that, like,
Right.
and why wouldn't you put them in school? Like, you don't want to break from them. No, I really enjoy
my people
having them around. I like them, you know. And I'm not saying if you send your kids to school and that's a relief to you, you're wrong at all. Everybody's wired different. But I was never one like, I just want to get rid of them. I just enjoy having them around.
Right.
Most days, you know. There's some days I'm like, why are we doing this again? This is just ridiculous. But for the most part, I just have always loved it. So,
that's so great. So what would you say is like your style or method of homeschooling, and did it change throughout the years, or did you like the way you started? Is that the way you homeschool now, and what is the way that you homeschool now?
Absolutely not. So when I started out, like most people when they start out who don't really know what they're doing, I just wanted somebody to send me everything I needed.
Yes.
So I can't remember if it was a Becca. It was something like one of those companies that would just send you, everything. And I'm thankful I did that because I really didn't know where to start. And so it gave me a starting place. But probably the second year into that, I started feeling more confident in what I was doing. And I started realizing that I knew my kids better than anybody did. And I saw their strengths and their weaknesses. Like one thing homeschooling has taught me is there is no perfect spelling curriculum. Like honestly, for a couple of my kids, we tried everything. And one of my kids, which I'll let him remain nameless, we got this little thing that you were supposed to be able to type in to it how you thought something was spelled, and it would tell you the right way to spell it. It didn't even know what he was talking about most of the time. Like, so, you know, I started to see like they're just wired different. You know, Caleb, we found out, is terribly dyslexic, and probably I have at least one other who is, but we just didn't know at the time.
Right.
And so
what did you do when you found out like he was dyslexic? What resources did you pull in to help you help him?
I didn't really, let me back up a little bit. So I initially wanted him to send me everything, and we did that. Then I realized we're big readers, and I'm a big believer in literature, and I have come to really appreciate unit studies. So when they were younger, we did 5 in a row. For years. And it's a literature-based curriculum using kids' picture books. And then there's before 5 in a row with more like board books, and then 5 in a row with picture books, and then beyond 5 in a row, that's more chapter books. So we did that for a long time. And I really liked it because it was easier as I had more kids that were involved to teach unit studies than to try and have each person's separate grade. And I think that's one thing that one of your questions is, you know, how do you teach different different grades? Yes. And unit studies have been great because you can teach somewhat to the older ones, but the younger ones are still learning, and then you're going to revisit with them when it's age appropriate for them anyways. So
do you pick a curriculum that had unit studies in it, or would you say, or would you make up your own unit studies? Like,
5 in a row is a unit study. Like that's what it is. For 5 days in a row, you read this book and you do, you know, one day you have science, one day you have English, so But then Amanda Bennett who's a very good friend of mine, has hundreds of unit studies she's written.
Okay.
I mean, she's written unit studies on just about everything you could possibly imagine studying. Like, she even has one on pizza. You know, she has one on baseball. She has all the different seasons, all the holidays, all, like, it's amazing the studies she has. So we've done a bunch of hers as well. So
Okay.
I didn't really create my own, but there's so many out there. And then as we moved into high school, the curriculum that I chose, a lot of it was the same. It was more that unit study where, you know, we were talking about for history using Knotgrass Company, which that combined history, literature, and Bible. So you had one thing, but it's knocking out like 3 different subjects all at once.
Okay.
And so,
yeah. So how did you know you were like teaching them everything that they needed to know?
I'm not.
Okay.
Nobody can teach them everything they need to know. I don't care if they go to public school, private school, or homeschool. There's always going to be gaps. Like, you know as well as I do, there's lots of things that you learned as an adult that you didn't learn as a child.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but I went to public school. So clearly there was gaps in my education, you know?
And I think that's like a myth that we believe that if they go to public school or private school, that they're going to learn everything that they need to know. And and I'm thinking, I'm 42 years old and there's still so much. The more I learn, the more I realize there's so much I don't know.
Right. Well, I'm 56 and I realize, wow, there's still things every day I go, I never knew that, you know? And so, you know, even I've never had to solve for X or Y in my adult life ever, you know? And so I learned sort of how to do that in school. Although I realized when I had to teach my own kids, I didn't really learn it. I just memorized what I needed to know for the time and moved on. But so I think my schooling has evolved to the point that now I'm able to look at my kids, their learning styles, their passions, and I have a confidence, which, I mean, I should after 25 years, to teach more to that and not feel like I have to go by what somebody else has determined is what my kids need to learn. My children, I have 2 that went to college. My middle one did not go to college. She's got a great job now. He's very successful at that. And I don't really see probably the younger 2 are going to go to a traditional college.
Right.
You know, Caleb may go to a trade school. Hannah may do something like take classes in nutrition. That's what she's interested in. So I don't feel like we have to do chemistry and calculus and all these college prep classes because that's not what they need. So this year, you know, for math, we're doing Dave Ramsey's personal finance because so many kids graduate from high school and they can maybe solve for Y, but they have no clue how to survive in the real world financially.
Right.
And it, to their detriment, so many of them end up, you know, with years and years of debt. Like they get married and it could be 10 years before
they're taking Dave Ramsey's course.
Right. And they're taking it later to try and, you know, manage all this that they've accrued instead of realizing, hey, let's learn this now. And I'm excited to take it with them.
Oh, I'm excited too. I was telling you before we got on here, I went on and ordered, I found it on the Facebook Marketplace and I'm like, yeah, somebody else was selling their used curriculum for the personal finance. And now I just have to go on Dave's website and order the workbook. So then for like record keeping sake, what do you do whenever because you're in Georgia and we're in South Carolina, like what would you write on their transcripts that, I guess if they're not going to college, they don't really need a transcript, but in case they decide to go to college, what do you write down as like a math?
Well, so my older 3 Rachel was homeschooled till she was a senior.
Okay.
And then Benji and Jesse were homeschooled until they went in as freshmen. Okay. So I really didn't have to do that so much. I did have, in order for Rachel to go into high school, I did have to show, and that was when we were doing more traditional So I could say, yes, she did apology of biology. She did apology of whatever.
Okay.
So I could indicate that. So now with this, I can't totally answer that because I haven't been required to do it, but I do know there's creative ways to do things and to show that, yes, they've learned, but even if they take, algebra 2, by the time they get to college, there's still stuff they don't know or don't remember or learned just for a test and then forgot. So it's kind of just learning to be creative. And it's not that you're trying to be deceptive at any level. It's just different kids learn differently. And yeah, you're just trying to equip them the best that you can for life, to get college, because honestly, college is a very small blip on their screen. We're trying to prepare them for life.
For life. Absolutely.
So I don't know.
So,
I didn't really answer your question about transcripts, but
no, I mean, and that's okay. I mean, I think that's one of the things is that you don't have to know it all, but you probably know somebody who does. So
exactly. Well, that's why, like, I referred somebody the other day to the Georgia Home Educators Association. I said, I don't really have an answer for that particular question, but these people deal with it all the time. So I would get in touch with them. So there's always people that you can get in touch with that can help walk you through different things. Not everybody has all the answers.
Yes, that's the truth. That is the truth.
And it's good to be able to admit you don't have all the answers, you know?
It really is. And that I was telling another homeschool mom that as well. I'm like, listen, these are the resources that we have used, but you got to, ultimately, you do have to do your own research and you know your kids. So how did you teach multiple grades? Because your first 3 kids, aren't they all pretty close in age?
Kind of. Like 20, there's 6 years between Rachel and Jesse.
Okay.
And there's a bit of a gap. And then Hannah and Caleb are very close in age. So really for one thing, with it, unit studies, it affords you the opportunity again to teach different levels at the same time. And so, that was one way that we did, we taught to the older, but the younger still got stuff. And then, sometimes when the little ones would nap, you'd have to do certain things, because sometimes you're just trying to survive, like how to keep everybody occupied and the little ones not, either swallowing something that might kill them or, drying all over the place. So you're in survival mode. So sometimes we would have to do things once they were taking a nap or whatever, but unit studies really helped me be able to kind of teach to more levels at one time.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to talk about like scheduling, because your kids were playing some sports and you've got a lot of mouths to feed. What did a typical day look like? And whenever your kids were young in the elementary years and then middle school, what I found and what I'm dealing with in middle school was a lot different than the busyness that I had in elementary. And now we're moving into high school. So how do you schedule it all? And what did a typical day look like? How did you do it but not drown and stay sane?
Right. And everything I'm going to say, you can plan and you can schedule, but you have to hold very loosely to that, because reality is life rarely goes as planned. And, one of my favorite quotes, basically the gist of it is, we view things as interruptions of our real life, but really those interruptions are our real life. That is the real life that God is sending to us each day. So for me, I'm very organized. I don't think well when there's chaos. So I'm very tidy. My furniture might need to be dusted, but pretty much everything's going to be in its place, because I just get stressed if I see stuff everywhere. So for me, we would, every day when the day finished, we tidied up. The kitchen was clean. I don't like waking up to yesterday's mess. Every day, because of what Tim did being a ministry, there's always people in and out. So the bathroom that was the one that guests would use, pretty much every morning I knew I'm gonna wipe that down real fast. It would take 2 minutes and then it was done. But I had that peace of mind that was done. And we lived life. But, at nap time, we tidied up. At bedtime, we tidied up. And it really taught my kids to manage their things as well. You know, I have some that are a little tidier than others, but I also taught my kids, like, starting at like 4, they're learning how to do their own laundry. They're learning how to sort their laundry. One thing that changed our life, and it sounds very dramatic, but it really did. You know, you can feel like you just every day, like you have mounds of laundry, you know, and it's never ending. Well, I read somewhere early on, each of my kids got a laundry basket in their closet. They put their dirty clothes in there. When that they knew when the clothes started getting to the top, it was time to wash. They would bring their clothes to the laundry room, sort them, wash them, put them back in, and take them back to their room. Yes. And they were trained early on, like, okay, you might not be able to reach the knobs, but you can dump everything in, and then I'll help you turn it on.
Right.
But they've been responsible for their own laundry for years and years and years.
You know, and I don't know why, and I think I might have said this to somebody else, but it did not dawn on me until like last year. And I wrote on my dryer with the Sharpie marker each day of my 4 kids. I'm like, Kate, let's say you get Monday, Claire, you get Tuesday, Karis Wednesday, and Corey Thursday. And then they have to they can come to my laundromat on those.
Right. Give your quarters. You know?
I need to start.
We actually make money too.
I know. I need to start charging them. But yes, instead of everybody doing all of their laundry and the whole family of 6 of us combined, it gets overwhelming for even me. It gets really overwhelming for. So.
Well, and instead of you doing everybody's laundry, it teaches them to be responsible. When Benji went to college, he had to teach so many of his baseball teammates how to do laundry. He's like, really? And his friends, when he was in high school, because he even would wash most of the time, like his baseball uniform. And occasionally, if it was really bad, I would help. Right. But, you know, his friends would make fun of him. And he's like, I mean, why should my mom have to do it all? Right. I mean, I'm the one getting it dirty. And so, you know, it just teaches them to be responsible. One day, I'm not going to be there to do everything for them. Right. You know, when they did go to school, they made their own lunch. You know, occasionally I would do it for them. And it's not that, believe me, I wait on my kids a lot. So it's not that I just always made them fend for themselves, but they have to learn to be responsible. That is part of my homeschool, is teaching them to be our job is to teach them one day to be responsible adults. So if I'm always doing everything for them, you know, there's been times I forgot my lunch. Oh man, I'm sorry. I'll make sure I have a snack for you when you get home. Like, you know, I might the first couple times take it, but if it becomes a pattern, you're gonna be hungry today. I'm sorry. You know?
Hope that doesn't happen to you again.
Tell you, really. Right.
Yeah.
But you know what? That kid usually remembered their lunch after that.
Yeah,
and I just don't want to train them that I or someone is always going to be there to bail them out.
That's so good. So what advice would you give to your younger homeschooling self and to the younger, you know, homeschooling moms that are just diving into this adventure? What would you have told that girl?
Honestly, it's very short and simple. I would tell her to breathe and it's all going to be okay. Because we put such unrealistic pressure on ourselves. I don't care if it's homeschooling, walking with Jesus, you know, being a wife, being a mom, being an employee. We just put unrealistic expectations on ourselves. And, you know, we're so much harder on ourselves than we are anybody else. Right. We're not going to teach them everything they need to know. But this is one thing I know. I'm teaching them how to learn and how to seek information. Right. You know, if they know how to learn and how to go about amassing information, they can learn whatever they want. Right. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm not going to do it all. You're not going to do it all. There's going to be gaps. But I mean, I don't care. The kid who's learning in Texas is learning different than the kid in Georgia. I mean, they're learning similar things, but they're going to have gaps because they're being taught differently on different schedules. And you know, what maybe one public school thinks you should have for science and as your freshman year, somewhere else might think you should have something else.
Right.
So there's really a lot of grace in it all. We just have to be willing to extend grace to ourselves.
Yeah. I think that is so true. And it's so good and refreshing to hear, even if you know it. I think just being reminded that give yourself some grace. Nobody knows it all. Nobody's got it all figured out.
I'm in my 25th year and I'm still going, shoot, what are we going to do? You know, like it's every year and that's the thing with homeschooling. It's fluid and it's always changing,
Right.
You know? And so you just have to, okay. And there's been times we've started with something and thought, okay, this just really is not working. And it's okay to say, you know what, this didn't work for us. And so instead of like last year, we got probably 3/4 of the way through Algebra 2. And one day, like I said, I was sitting there looking at Hannah, trying to figure out like what X was. Like, this, you know what? So I went and I bought Larry Burkett's workbooks on some personal finance stuff, and we finished out the year doing that. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, she's had enough of how to solve X. She's not even going to remember anyways next year. So it's okay to say, you know what, this isn't working for us.
Right.
And just move. It's not a failure. It's really something good because you've recognized
this is
sometimes, sometimes realizing what doesn't work is as important as realizing what does.
I think that is so true. I've had to do that multiple times with my kids. And I have also found like being careful not to compare myself with other homeschooling moms, because everybody has a different style and a different method for what works in their schooling. And I would look at some and I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should go do that. And then we try to do it and I'm like, this is terrible for us. Like, it does not work. And then sometimes you'll feel defeated if you're comparing yourself to the mom down the street or next door that's doing a little different than you. So,
and all kids are wired different. Some are wired very academically. They, thrive on structure and like the classical method and, learning Latin and that is awesome. My kids would have lost their ever-loving minds and made me lose mine in the process doing that. It's just not how they're wired. But that doesn't mean they're right and we're wrong, or we're right and they're wrong. It's just different. And we learn differently. And so, like I said, I had 2 that went to college. They did great while they were there, so, and I remember, when my older kids went into high school, those first like 2 or 3 months, I was so stressed out. Like, oh my gosh, what if, if they get there and they struggle so bad, who are they going to blame? It's that homeschool teacher, but they got there and they did great. And
that's encouraging to hear. So if they go back to school now, how did you make that decision of sending some of your kids to school after you've been homeschooling? Because I know sometimes if you can get so stuck in the homeschooling world, you're like, my kids will never go to school. And then there comes a season where they may need to go. So how did you make that decision?
Well, especially for the boys, Benji and Jesse, the older 2 boys, were baseball players. And so we had kind of, rec only goes so far. You can play travel ball, but then, your life, first of all, it's very expensive and your life is never your own anymore. And so playing high school baseball was our best choice at that point, but you couldn't homeschool and be a part of a team. You had to actually go to school there. Some states you can, but Georgia was one where you couldn't. So, it just made sense for them to go to high school. And sometimes too, I think for boys, and again, this was just for us, it was good for them to go and have men teachers. And, Tim's a great hands-on dad, but I was the teacher because he's working. So to have men teachers that were investing in them, that was really good for them. And so, Benji went to college, Jesse didn't, but, and Benji went to college, but he's using nothing that he took in college now. He's in ministry and doing awesome. Jesse didn't go to college and has a job and is doing amazing, been promoted and just doing great things. And so everybody's wired different.
Right. It is true. And I think just trusting your intuition with that. Okay. So logistically, how did you feed everybody? I feel like everybody wants to eat all day when you're homeschooling. Okay. And we talked about this before about being, having some plans. So walk us through like a typical day, and what things would you do to set yourself up to feed everyone and to have a good day?
That is a legit question because they are hungry every stinking day. I'm like, I fed you 3 meals yesterday. What's wrong? You know? So for me, and because Tim worked at home, when he was there, when we were all homeschooling, we ate our big meal at lunch.
Okay.
And it just worked for us.
Now, would you cook like early? Like my grandmother, she wakes up in the morning and thaws out her meat, and she's pretty much got lunch cooked before everybody gets out of bed. Is that what you do, or how did you?
Kinda like we would, or I usually had a plan on what we're gonna eat. You know, I'm a planner, so I may not know everything we're gonna have each day, but I know what I have and what meals we're probably gonna have that week. And so it's kind of like, oh, I kind of feel like this today.
Right.
So we'd go with that. So, you know, I'd get them working on stuff and I'd be back and forth in the kitchen. But having our big meal at lunch just made it easier for us.
Right.
And you know, I would get up, I'd fix breakfast, clean that up, you know, then getting lunch prepared. But then after that, it afforded me the opportunity to allow them to get whatever they wanted later. We had leftovers. So, you know, it just gave me a little more freedom later in the day when I was more apt to be tired and frazzled because I've been homeschooling all day and trying to maintain a house. So it just worked for us. Once the kids went to school, we couldn't do that anymore. But, you know, Tim tells my kids all the time, he's like, you realize most kids don't eat like this every day, right? Like you get that. And cooking, I just love. It's a passion of mine. It's Hannah, it's a passion of hers. So she's helped a lot. But, you know, like most kids would take sandwiches for lunch. And, you know, my kids have all these elaborate leftovers. Like their friends were like, what do you have for lunch today? Like, you know, they were just fascinated with the stuff that they had. But I'm used to fixing lots of food. So I always fixed enough that we had at least 2 or 3 more meals probably, you know, to eat for lunches or snacks or whatever, because they're always hungry.
They're always hungry. Okay, so what would you do like in the afternoons or when it gets like later on in the school year and you're like, I'm done, I want to check out? Like, how did you not want to lose your mind and get rid of all of your kids and leave everybody?
Right. One thing that was almost non-negotiable for us each and every day was once they were past the age of napping, they still had to go to their room every day in the afternoon after we had lunch. Now, occasionally, you know, I would have to work with some of the older ones with stuff, but for the most part, that was a hard and fast rule that we did not break. For at least an hour, y'all are going to your rooms. I don't even really care what you do while you're in there. I just don't want to see your face. I don't want to hear you.
That's so good. Y'all mamas, write that note down.
Yeah, I don't want to hear you, see you, nothing. And initially, I felt guilty about that. And, you know, if I was really tired and I laid down, I'd feel guilty because I thought, well, you know, my friend, she's working. She can't take a nap in the afternoon. And I'm like, that is so ridiculous. She's probably resting at times that I can't. And, you know, if the opportunity presented itself and I needed a nap, I would take it. You know, usually I would take that time. I recharge by reading and writing. And so I would do that most days, but sometimes I took a nap. And sometimes I just laid and stared out the window. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'd go for a walk, but that was because they needed that as much as I did. They each needed, when you're all together all the time, everybody, I don't care if you're an introvert or extrovert, everybody needs their own little space sometimes. And so then we come out, we've all had our time, and you know, some took to that a little easier than others, but they were trained that I don't really care if you want to stay in there. This is what you're doing. And it just helped me maintain sanity.
Yeah, I love that. I tell my kids, I'm like, I don't want to see you and I don't want to hear you for a good hour. Don't ask me a question. Don't like, figure it out yourself and be quiet.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think we can, you know, feel guilty, like that we need that. No, it's okay to express, I have needs. It is a lot to be around your children all day, every day. You're
Yeah.
not only treating them just in life, but you're their teacher. You're investing so much in them. And sometimes you just need a break. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. So what would you say has been like a blessing that came out of their homeschooling journey? You're not quite done with all of your kids just yet, but you're far enough along. You're far enough along
Yes.
that you've gotten some through at least through the high school ages and stuff. So what would you say has been one of the biggest blessings that you've received from homeschooling?
Honestly, I think probably the biggest blessing is the relationship that we share together as a family. And I am not saying if your kids go to school, they're not going to like each other, you're not going to be close. I'm not saying that, but just the opportunity it afforded us to minister together, to, you have to learn to work stuff out. Like you have to learn, there's plenty of times my kids still laugh. They might have an argument now. I'm like, I can sit you in the floor and make you hold hands again until until you're not mad at each other. Like, do that if you want. It look ridiculous at your age, but just teaching them, like, you have to learn to work through conflict when you're with each other all the time. And, but just they're close. And, I remember one time, one of the most special things to me was, Benji was in college, or it might've been when he was getting ready to go to college. At any rate, he and I up there together, and we were driving home, two of us, which was very rare. And he started talking about all the books that we read. And because I always read out loud to my kids, like chapter books, we had a literature-based curriculum, but then a lot of time, we read all kinds of chapter books, some of them just fun fiction, some of them biographies, but we read all the time. And he was just talking about like all the books that we read and the things that we did. And, that meant so much to me because those were very special times to me. But then I realized here's my college boy,
right,
who's reminding me it was really special for them too.
That's cool.
So, that is one thing I would encourage you if you're starting out, read to your kids all the time.
All the time. That's good. I want to incorporate that more. Do you listen to Read Aloud Revival, that podcast? Have you ever heard of it? It's Sarah McKenzie. She recommends books all the time to read aloud to your kids. And she's always putting out like a book list for different ages and things like that.
Right. Well, and a lot of times, when they were in their rooms in the afternoon, if they're older, we'd get books on tape from the library. We had, the Jonathan Park CDs and Adventures in Odyssey, we
did a lot of Adventures in Odyssey.
Yeah. So, they were always listening to things or reading things. As they got older, they would read in the afternoons, but just reading out loud to my kids and making that a priority. If I had to cut out a lot of different things, that would be the one thing I wouldn't cut out.
Even as they got into like the older middle school or high school, did you read aloud to them anymore?
So one of our favorite Christmas traditions is the best Christmas pageant ever. Okay. Have you ever heard of that?
I have heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Oh my goodness, you have to. And there's a video.
Yes.
There's a video a DVD that goes along with it, or you can get it on YouTube, the Herdmans. So even like the last couple of years, like Benji come home from college and he's like, are we going to read the best Christmas pageant ever? It was just a tradition. And so certain things like that, as they got older and they were in school, obviously we didn't, but there were still certain things that to them were important. My kids are huge on tradition. Yeah. And so they're like, this is what we always do. Why are we not doing this? And so
good.
I just realized stuff like that
it matters.
It's important to me, and I'm not always sure how important it is to them. It really is, even if they don't always like to admit it.
Got it. Okay. Well, you mentioned 5 in a row, and then a Becca that you use. Is there any other curriculums that you've used that you're like, be sure to look into this one?
Yes. So especially as they get older, we use teaching textbooks for math.
Okay.
And I really like that. I love the Knotgrass Company.
Okay. Well, I've got some of their stuff.
They incorporate history, literature, and Bible all into one curriculum. They have like a Georgia history for younger kids, and then they have U.S. world, they have economics, government, and they're amazing. Like if you have questions, they're great to dialogue with, and they'll help you work through things. So I can't speak highly enough about them. And then Apologia for Science.
Okay.
Those were like our core things. And then just we read a ton.
Okay. Okay.
You know, we read about a lot of missionaries. We read, you know, a lot of biographies, because you can learn a lot, again, not only what you should do, but what you shouldn't do by reading biographies,
Right.
you know? And my kids were always, even when we would read fiction books, sometimes when they're little, they're like, did this really happen? Like, they just wanted to know, like, is this real? Yes. So they love biographies, knowing like this really did happen.
That's cool.
And, you know, we can really learn from this. Right. And so
that's so good to know. I've taken notes, so I'm going to link all of these in our comments below. Okay. So before we close, aside from homeschooling, what else is Barb Cash really into? What are you totally into this season of life?
I'm pretty boring, I would have to say, but I'm a very extreme introvert, which surprises people. But my friend in Texas, Gwen, says an introvert with good people skills is still an introvert. And so I do have good people skills, but I recharge by myself. So I'm more apt to pick like reading. I love to write. I love to quilt. I like to create things. I love being outside. So, and Tim would know this, and this is one thing I think is important for us too. I hardly ever said, I have to go somewhere. Like, I'm leaving for the day and I don't know when I'll be back. But he knew if I said it, he better make it happen. And so, like, I have a spot up at Lake Lanier. It's this little peninsula that juts into the lake. And I would go and I'd take a quilt and I'd take my lunch and I'd listen to music, and I would lay on my back and stare at the sky, or lay on my side and stare at the water for hours. And, you know, just being outside and just being able to breathe and being able to not have to answer a million questions. Yes. Like I told Tim so many times, I have been assaulted by questions all day long. And if one more person, if you ask me a question, I'm sorry, it's not going to be your fault, but I might lose it because I'm just tired of being asked questions. And you multiply every question by 5. Oh, like, what are we having for lunch? What are we having for dinner? Where are we going? What's going on today? You know, by the time the 5th one asked, it was not really safe for them to get ahead. So, you know, just providing for me. You know, now people that are extroverts, sometimes it's getting together with your friends, and I do enjoy that. But what sustained me was those more quiet, private things.
Right. And I've given yourself permission to know you and what speaks to you to recharge you, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And so.
Right. And you don't have to apologize to anybody for needing what you need at that particular time.
Right. I feel like that I've been learning that more and more in this season. Every morning I do this. I pretty much do the same thing every morning. I've gotten my morning routine down. I get up. I've been listening to the Bible and the Bible recap. I've been trying to get off of coffee. I still love coffee very much. So, and then I take the dogs for a walk, and I don't want to be talked to. And so I get up early so that nobody will talk to me.
Right.
And I have learned to put like my workout clothes or whatever outside of my room, because if I go back, my husband's like, where are you going? What are you doing? What are you doing? Where?
Yeah.
And then
have a lot in common, don't they?
Oh my God. I'm doing the same thing I do every morning. I'm going to go read my Bible. I'm going to drink my coffee. I'm going to take the dogs out. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to pee. Do you want to know?
And I don't want to talk to you about any of it. You know, I just want to be able to do it quietly.
Yeah. And they're like, why are you such a jerk? I'm like, I'm not trying to be.
We're both morning people, but I'm a quiet morning person and he's not such a quiet morning person. And so, you know, we've had to learn, like, I just I come get my coffee, then I go back to my room and I read my Bible and I write my journal, and I have to have that.
Right.
Now I can enter the world.
Yes.
You know, where he's like 90 to nothing as soon as he gets up, you know? So, and that's fine. We're all wired different.
We are all wired different.
And that's the most important thing, even with our kids, how they learn. One's not better than the other, because God made us all and wired us all. Right. And we just appreciate our differences.
That's right. That's so good. Well, Barb, thank you for your time. If somebody wanted to reach out to you or just pick your brain a little bit more, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, my email is barbcash@bellsouth.net.
Okay.
And if somebody was really desperate, you have my phone number. So, you could.
That's right.
Hanging by a thread, you can
reach out to me and I'll connect you with Barb. So,
yeah.
All right. Well,
I appreciate you having me.
Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who was able to watch us, and hopefully you learned something, and reach out to one of us if you have any questions. So, All right. Thanks, Barb.
Bye.
Bye.